Hello, welcome to Wolf on Wheels. In this episode we are reviewing the Honda CRV Hybrid. Back in 1995 Honda released the first Honda CRV. It was an instant hit with the buying public and has gone on to be the best-selling SUV in the world. A few years ago I owned a CRV and became very attached to it. It was quiet, comfortable and usefully capacious in size. Moving forward to 2018 and Honda releases the latest version of the CRV. Every aspect of the car was meticulously inspected and revised. It now has a chassis from the Honda Civic, no bad thing, a sleeker body and significant changes to the technology and the engine range. Gone are the diesel and the 2-litre petrol, and in come a 1.5 turbocharged 4-cylinder from Honda's Earthdreams engine technology. The biggest news is the inclusion of a new hybrid drivetrain. This is the car we test here in SR trim.
The outside of the CRV is more evolution than revolution, with slightly more aggression to the front end. There are new LED headlights as well as new design LED fog lights. The rear lights of the CRV wrap round and the new design really stands out. I particularly like the new alloy wheels on this SR version. One of the most important parts of any car for a disabled driver is the boot. And the CRV doesn't disappoint with a capacity of 497 litres, which expands to 1064 litres with the rear seats down. These are lowered from the rear of the car by convenient handles, great for a disabled driver to have. There's also a 12-volt socket as well as tie-down hooks for wheelchairs and scooters.
The Honda CRV has always been known for the amount of space it has in the back of the car. This version's no different. I've recently been measured and my friends in Scotland, hi Paul, will laugh at this, but I am actually 5'11". Now that's not short, and I have plenty of knee space and I have plenty of space to put my feet under the front seat, even when it's set to its lower position. Now space in the back for headroom wise, well, I'm quite long in the body and I have at least a fist of space above my head. How it will be in the EX trim with the panoramic sunroof, I'm not sure. They can often mean a lack of headroom in the back because of the fitments, but I think even so, tall people will not find a problem getting comfortable in the back of the CRV. Now the seats themselves are as comfortable as the front ones. They really are supremely comfortable. And I can see long journeys not being a problem for anybody.
Passengers in the back of the CRV also get 2 air conditioning vents plus 2 2.5 amp USB-A charging sockets. These will be great for iPads and games machines for kids on long journeys. The door pockets are huge and would easily take bottles and cans plus said iPads. And I particularly like the aluminium finish on the SR model as opposed to the wooden finish on other models that I've seen in the range.
So what is the Honda CRV like as a driver's car? Well, in fact, it's really good. Honda have used the same chassis and underpinnings as they have in the Honda Civic, and we all know that is a very good car to drive. The ride seems to be particularly well judged for a car of this type. It's firm without being too hard and soft enough at higher speeds to make it very comfortable for longer journeys. In conjunction with these superb seats that Honda fit, I can't think of another car I've driven recently that would be as comfortable on a trip to Scotland, Wales or the West Country from Lincolnshire. Handling is very good indeed. Despite it being an electric power steering system, I've found that feedback is very good. You can tell what the wheels are doing, and the car turns into the apex very nicely with very little drama at all. You can push it quite a lot for a car of this type and it won't complain, but when it does complain it will gradually move into understeer, and it stays predictable all the way through to the point where you really shouldn't be pushing it any harder anyway. It's not a sports car by any means, but it certainly is more lively and more fun to drive than I've seen a lot of other journalists talk about. Maybe Honda have made some revisions in the past few months and tightened things up, but certainly this car I can find nothing to complain about in the handling. The ride can get a little after and forward pitchy on some of Lincolnshire's very undulating roads, but that's because body control is so tight, so there's very little uncontrolled movement, which can make sharper undulations pitch you backwards and forwards a little bit, but they are very, very extreme roads that we have here because we live on marshland and because roads do sink. And the tarmac does have to cope with that. So what's it like on long journeys? Well, the active safety systems are very well judged. The radar cruise control has particularly good settings on it. At no stage does it jerk or accelerate and throw you backwards or forwards in your seat. Lane keep assist is particularly good because it will handle a lot sharper turns, a lot tighter turns than I've seen some other systems in other cars handle. And I was quite surprised on twisty, bendy Lincolnshire roads just how much assistance the lane keep assist will give you. It does need, as other systems, well-marked lanes to work, and it doesn't work below about 40 miles an hour. But when it is working, it does its job admirably, which is something I can't say for the off-road mitigation system that is fitted to this car. It's something that I would like Honda to look at because it's just a little bit too sensitive in its settings. When you live in a rural county like this with short, tight turns and tight country lanes, it seems to feel that you're about to run off the road when all you're actually doing is making way for another driver. If you ignore it, then the system shuts down and goes AWOL for a good 10 minutes, and in that time you could actually be running off road. But when it does come back, yes, it's there for a good reason and it's there to protect you, but I don't think it's quite as good as systems that I've experienced in Volvos, for instance. Other than that, I can find very little to complain about in the car. There is some road noise on badly made up, badly tarmac roads, but you have a lot of cabin space here for noises like that to resonate through. So I suppose to a certain extent that's understandable. But generally on roads such as this, as you can hear, it's very, very quiet indeed. Most roads in Lincolnshire, whilst undulating, have a good surface on them, and in the time I've had the car, I haven't really noticed that the road noise has irritated me at all. It was only earlier, before I started filming, when I was on a newly tarmac road with obviously rough gravel, that you noticed a certain level of road noise creeping through. Otherwise, on long journeys and in everyday use, this is a very pleasant place to be. The car just does its job nicely, and I think you could get quite fond of it. I wouldn't say it's a car with a massive amount of personality, but I think you'd come to appreciate its qualities. What I don't appreciate so much are the small graphics on the digital driver's display. The graphic in particular the graphic for the speed limiter is very, very small, and it's very hard to discern between the system just being active and the system doing its job. You press the button once to turn the system on, make it active, and then you press it again to set the limit. And there is a tiny, tiny graphic next to the original graphic to show you that the system is actually doing its job. The speed sign recognition in general can be the same, very small and difficult to see, although there is a separate screen that you can bring up which will show you the speed signs at a larger size. And one thing I do like about it is it doesn't just show you the speed. If there's a no overtaking sign, it will show you that as well, for instance. That's something I've not seen much of in other cars, and it's very welcome in this one. For disabled drivers, there could be one issue I can think of, and that's because of the regenerative brake system paddles on the back of the steering wheel. For those disabled drivers who rely on a behind-the-wheel accelerator ring, they may interfere with the mechanics of that. It's something it's worth checking with your adaptation specialist to find out. Now, I would imagine there's ways around it, because quite a lot of these cars now have these flappy paddles as either regenerative brake paddles or for changing gear with automatic gearboxes. So I would imagine that the adaptation specialists have come up with a way around it. But it is something that I would say to you, just check with them first before you buy the car. As for other systems, I can see no problem. There is plenty of space on either side of the steering wheel for hand controls, for brake and accelerator assist. There's plenty of space for joystick controls, and the wheel is certainly large enough for you to have auxiliary controls for the indicators and wipers, although the stalks are very near to the wheel, so I think very few people, sorry for the noise, I'm following a tractor, something you do a lot here in Lincolnshire. I would think that the stalks are perfectly fine, except for people that really do have problems with motability of their fingers. Other than that, the footwells are of a good size, and some people do get impatient with tractors. I just can't be bothered. It's not worth the risk. Other than that, I can't find anything with the footwells that would stop you from having pedal adaptations. Certainly if you need the accelerator to be put onto the left foot rather than the right, there's plenty of space here next to the footrest to do it. Yeah, I mean, reaching down, I would have plenty of space next to the accelerator pedal, the brake pedal, for the accelerator to be on the left-hand side of it. And the brake pedal is certainly large enough to hit easily, and the accelerator is very comfortable to use. So for disabled drivers, I don't think there's going to be a problem with many of the adaptations we need to be able to drive a car. I certainly didn't find any issues with transferring from my wheelchair to the driver's seat, but you do have to remember I do have use of my legs. The main reason I use a wheelchair is because it is incredibly painful for me to put my feet on the floor, but when it comes to transferring to a car, I don't have any issues. I can get out of my wheelchair and into the car quite happily. Under normal circumstances, at this point, I would probably like to bring in my friend Rob, who is a paraplegic and is used to transferring from his chair to a car without the use of his legs. It's quite impressive to watch him do it, but because of COVID, it's not been possible this time. But for a car that could be a major feature for disabled people on the Motability scheme, I think it will be fairly easy for you to transfer from a chair to get into it. And of course, adaptations to the seat should be quite easy, especially in this SR model because it doesn't have electric seats. You have to move up to the EX model to get that level of adjustment. And sometimes that's unwanted. If you need to have your seat pivot or swing out so that you can transfer to your wheelchair, it can compromise that ability if the seats are electrically adjusted. Said that, with the electric seats on the EX being fitted, I think you're just going to find the car even more comfortable if you don't need to have any sort of pivot or swing arm on the seat to get you in and out of the car. Certainly getting people into the back of the car isn't an issue. The doors open wide, and although they are quite short, they open wide enough to make it easier for parents of disabled children to lift them into the car quite easily. And I would think, because the two ISOFIX points on the outer seats are easy to use, I don't think a parent would find it any more difficult than in any other car to get them in. Because this is an SUV in at a slightly higher angle, my thoughts are that possibly it will be easier for some parents because they're not having to bend down so much to put the child in the car at a distance, therefore putting extra strain on their back. Generally, this is a very good car for disabled people. Certainly, it is very economical. There have been times this week where this car has registered 65 miles per gallon and more on a long run. Even on the journeys I've done around town, this has never dipped below 45, 46 miles to the gallon. I think most people will see, on average, 50 to the gallon out of this car easily. You do have to, as with a lot of hybrids, learn to drive the car and learn to know its foibles. Because electric motors have different torque characteristics to the petrol engine, in most hybrid cars there is a point on the accelerator where you will get maximum performance with very little engine noise because the car is riding on the wave of torque from the electric motors. And the same goes for this car. At around 50 miles an hour, if you put the accelerator down about a quarter in its normal setting, the car will ride the torque from the electric motor and will accelerate nicely with very little engine noise. Having said that, if you put it in sport, then there is an issue, because the car will rev to its limit and the engine can get gruff. Now, this engine runs on the Atkinson cycle, which, if you know anything about them, they do tend to be a little rougher at higher revs. But in general, it's a very quiet, very relaxed car, and unless you are the sort of driver who goes everywhere at full speed, I don't think you're ever going to find it an issue. I'm very grateful to John O'Brien at Honda for lending me this car from the press fleet. When you're a new channel, I think they have to have a certain amount of trust in you as a person to lend you one of their cars. And John has shown me that trust, and I am very grateful, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank him for that trust. If you've liked this review, then please like it in the comments below, and please subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon to be reminded of any further videos I'll do. I have a lot of plans for Wolf on Wheels. I think it's an issue that needs to be discussed, the future of motoring, where it's heading to, EVs in general, and the benefits that they can give to disabled drivers. I'm hoping to have a pure EV for my next review. I won't say which one yet, but I have a few lined up. And I would like to show you that there are benefits to driving an electric vehicle. Hybrids are here to stay for quite a few years, and this is a particularly good hybrid. But EV sales are increasing rapidly, and I want disabled drivers to understand the benefit of having an electric vehicle. Being able to just plug it in at night when you get home instead of having to go to a fuel station, or being able to have your family just plug it in at night for you to save you having to stop at a fuel station and ask for help. One benefit. The other benefit is they are incredibly cheap to run, and for some of us that's very important because we are on limited budgets. So my aim will be to look at how I can save you money, how I can improve your ability to get out on the road and enjoy yourself, and how the technology in new cars can benefit disabled people. I mean, you might not be aware of this, but this car has been generally helping me with the steering for the past few minutes, and I've not had to think about it. I'm concentrating on the road, but the car is ensuring that I'm in the right place on the road, and it's taken a lot of stress from my driving and talking to you at the same time. Now that's just one aspect of new technology in cars. I can see a future not too far off where people who never thought they'd be able to make use of a car, blind people for instance, will be able to summon a car and take them to see their doctors, see their nurse, see their family, go on holiday. That's something that 10 years ago I don't think I would have been saying. But thanks to companies like Tesla with Elon Musk, and thanks to companies like Honda working on massive amounts of new technology, Toyota's working on massive amounts of new technology, Chinese companies are becoming more relevant, whatever their politics. I think we have to now start looking for an electric future for disabled drivers as well as able-bodied drivers. And we need to have a voice, and we need to have a say in how those cars are designed and how the systems will help us. And I'm hoping Wolf on Wheels will be able to do that for you. I'm aiming to bring in some other drivers with different disabilities. There goes that system again, and I was on the opposite side of the road to the edge. I'd like to bring in other drivers because disabilities are very personal and very unique to each person. One paraplegic, for instance, can have different issues to another. One person with spina bifida can have different issues to another. No two disabled people are alike. So the future of the car really does need to take that into account. I'm sure you're aware that we have rights as disabled people to have access to public places and to other things that involve making life easier for us. I'd like cars to be one of those things that makes life easier for all disabled drivers. Being able to summon an auto Uber or any taxi that doesn't need a driver, that allows a person who couldn't normally drive to just give it directions to where they want to go, and give them that freedom, is a massive step forward. For a lot of disabled drivers who find long journeys very tiring, the technology will be a massive step forward. And this is what I want to promote with Wolf on Wheels. I'm not the most disabled person there is. I do have serious issues, and I do have to use a wheelchair most days, and other days I can walk with a stick. That puts me in a position of seeing life both from a standing position and from a wheelchair. But I can't replicate other disabilities, so I would like to have other people presenting these shows too. I would also like to have some disabled forums where perhaps a manufacturer, and this is a call out to all manufacturers out there, where a manufacturer is willing to bring in a group of disabled potential customers and ask them how they feel about the design of their cars. Ask them to talk about the specific issues they are going to have with a new car design before things are set in concrete. And whilst the manufacturers have time to make those little changes that could make life better for all of us. Cars aren't just for able-bodied people. For us, they are a lifeline, they are a tool, they are an extension of our normal everyday lives. They aren't just a luxury, and car makers need to recognise that and to add our thoughts into their design process. I can see some future tech companies doing that already, and it's encouraging. There's one particular company in America that I know Jay Leno has interviewed recently, and I'm quite encouraged about what they are aiming to do with rideshare cars and with a leasing program on their cars. In fact, they will not be selling cars to anybody, they will be leasing them. But the design of their cars seems to already encourage use by disabled drivers. Now, for the moment, being slightly middle-aged, I've forgotten the name of the company, but I can assure you it really made an impact on me. The level of attention to detail they had gone into and the thought that had been put behind having disabled drivers or disabled people in general in their cars. I was very impressed. Now, that's just one company. We have a lot of new companies coming in from America. We have a lot of new companies coming in to the market from China. We have a lot of new companies coming into the market from smaller countries in Europe, such as Switzerland, where they have been outsiders in the past. For instance, this week we've seen the release of the new Polestar 2. Now, Polestar was the performance wing of Volvo, but now it's going to be a major player in the EV car industry. So I would like to see new manufacturers thinking more about the design of their vehicles and the impact it has on disabled citizens who need to use them. Not just the drivers, but passengers, children, adults, with varying forms of disability. It's been a bugbear of mine for a very long while, because over my life, even before I started to have mobility issues of my own, I have spent a lot of time with disabled people with varying problems. I've seen how cars have had to be adapted. I've seen how some of them who would be perfectly able to drive weren't able to drive because the cars themselves prohibited it in their design. One in particular, for instance, who was a Paralympian, could quite easily have driven a car, but because of his size, because of his shape, couldn't comfortably fit into a driver's seat and steer the car with his hands. He's a perfectly able chap, but given a new adaptation where, for instance, he was driving the car completely with a joystick, he would have been fine, and I would have been perfectly comfortable behind the wheel of a car being driven by him. So these are the things that I want to deal with Wolf on Wheels. Now, as I say, I'll stop waffling now. Do subscribe to the channel. Do put the bell icon on to remind you when I've posted a new video. And fingers crossed, I'll have some exciting videos for you in the near future. So thanks once again. I have been Nathan Wolf, and you have been watching Wolf on Wheels. you.